Welcome back, Heat Seekers. We are here with your Week 7 IDP Waiver Wire pickups to help you win this week. With that being said, don't forget, like, subscribe, hit the notification icon so you can stay up to date when Kraig and I drop all sorts of amazing goodness in IDP. And let's do it. So at linebacker, Mr. Kraig, who are we picking up this week?
Once again, we have three linebackers for you to take a look at. One of them, we were a little bit slower coming around on, I think, but he has shown well, and he seems to be the guy in the middle for the Tennessee Titans here, David Long Jr. As a note, just watch out when you are picking him up if you choose to, because there is a cornerback with the same name on the Rams, and you don't want to pick up the wrong guy. So pay attention to that. But he has, from week 2 on, been right at basically 100% snap share in 4 weeks. Because he hasn't played Monday night. He's recording this on Monday, and they play the Bills this week. So with only 4 weeks, he's still a top 40 linebacker, and that's without anything really that first week because he didn't get any stats. He's doing very well since he's taken over there. They've had some injuries. They seem to have some discontent with bringing in Avery Williamson. Rashawn Evans is hurt, and Jane Brown hurt. So he's been a great play if you've been able to get him in the 4 weeks, 19 solos, 10 assists, 3 tackles for a loss. So I like him a lot if he's still available in your league. Second one, Anthony Walker of the Browns. He came back after being injured. I think he was out 3 or 4 weeks. He had gotten hurt in practice. He played week 1, and then week 2, 3, and 4, I think he missed. He played a little bit week 5, got back to a 79% snap share week 6, and on top of that, JOK got hurt. He hurt his ankle, and they're doing an MRI. He had taken over. They tried a couple different options, the main linebacker, and it looks like Walker is probably going to come back into that, and he produced again this week when he got that higher snap share. So if he's the guy there in the middle, as they call it, production by default, you're going to get out of him. And Walker's a great pickup if he was dropped by someone since he'd been injured.
Yeah, and you could see, I've checked a few leagues that I have IDP where he was out on waivers because of there was no production and somebody needed to replace him. There's certainly good opportunity for that, and definitely one that defense will be funneling people his way for getting those tackles. So good choice there. Who's the third one?
Third one is a Texan guy we haven't really talked about prior. It's Camu Grugier-Hill. He's right now the second linebacker for the Texans. Really, Tim and Kirksey basically getting 100% snap shares. Zach Cunningham seems to be going the way of the dodo there in Houston, and they even had Neville Hewitt get quite a few more snaps than he did this week, which is really crazy to see. Makes you wonder what's going on. But regardless, he's on the field, and he's been getting production. Both those linebackers are getting production. Kirksey we've talked about previously. And, you know, he's a top 3, Kemu, that is a top 30 linebacker over the past 3 weeks. And when you're getting into this sort of thick of it with bye weeks, we got 6 teams on bye weeks this week: Bills, Cowboys, Jaguars, Vikings, Steelers, Chargers. Of course, there's only the second week of bye weeks. You're going to have to be finding people to fill into those slots, whether it's your linebacker 2, your flex, something like that. And the Texans' bye week is week 10, so you at least get a few weeks out of him where he's on the field.
Absolutely. And that defense is going to be on the field a lot. And the offense isn't exactly doing them a lot of favor. So those are good plays. What are we doing at the with the secondary?
Secondary, we're going to start off with Brandon Jones of the Miami Dolphins. Been a lot of hope for him to coming into this year that he'd get more playing time. It really didn't start with Eric Rowe being the guy to start, and that's reversed over the past 2 weeks here. Rowe has been down like in the 20 to 30% snap share, with Brandon Jones being up in that 70-75-ish sort of zone for snaps, being their strong safety, and he is playing over half of his snaps each of the past 2 games, closer to that they call in the box with the linebackers or the defensive linemen, and he's been getting you production. He is still a top 30 safety. You know, if you do have cornerbacks split out, they're included, it's going to be a little bit lower than that. But again, with bye weeks coming in, he's getting playing time amped up, and he's been getting production in these weeks. So I like him as an ad here, and they don't have a bye week until week 14. So potentially, if he's going to be keeping this and they're not playing games with switching safeties every few weeks, you could have a guy that could be a nice fill-in for quite a few weeks here.
And with some of the injuries and some of the way things have been going in IDP, you're going to need players like that. So good call there. Who's next?
Kareem Jackson in the IDP world. He's the second safety in the Broncos when you think about him, with Justin Simmons being the main guy, but he's actually and it's about the same. Those minuscule number of points that can separate players, and you're getting down there in rankings. He's 2 spots above Simmons on the year. He's a safety 35 using that RotoHeat scoring, which you can look at its balanced scoring. We have a link to that in the article. But he, outside of 2 dud weeks, which he did have towards the start of the year, he's averaged 7 combined tackles the 4 other weeks, and they're playing the Browns this week, and the Browns are, I think it was the 3rd most points given up to opposing safeties this year, and of course they're going to be needing to throw the ball here with their taking cue from the Baltimore Ravens and putting all their backs on IR here. It seems getting hurt. So I like Kareem Jackson as a pickup, and potentially someone with the way that he's been playing give you value the rest of the year too.
And he's such a savvy veteran. He knows that system. He's been playing for a long time and he's been successful in it. I mean, sometimes you can give guys like that a bit of a mulligan when they have some off times throughout the season, not only at their age, but just in general. So I think it's a good pickup, and I think it's somebody you can trust going forward for sure. But know that you'll have those potential up and down weeks with that player specifically. But I don't think there's too much to worry about there. And who's the corner you want to talk about?
Yeah, this is a guy that may have been dropped because they was on the bye week this past week. Bryce Hall of the New York Jets. He's very low owned as most cornerbacks are, but he's gotten production. He's a top 13 cornerback this year, actually. And outside of week 1, when he didn't, I think he might have had one solo and assist, but outside from that, he's had at least 5 combined tackles. They did play the Patriots already this year. It was week 2. He had 5 solos, an assist, and a tackle for a loss. He's on the field. He's got the 98% snap share, and the Patriots give up the most points to opposing cornerbacks. So he's proven it this year against the Patriots. Patriots give it up a lot. He's on the field. He's getting production. Otherwise, I think he's a great play this week if he's available in your leagues. And you need a corner.
Yep. Another one like Houston where that defense should be on the field early and often. So Hall gives you that opportunity for a good amount of tackles and maybe some other things there too. Finishing it out, who are we talking about at the D-line position?
Yeah, this is always the hardest one, man. With the injuries, the rotations, everything, it is getting hard to find some of these guys. You got to dig deep, especially when there's bye weeks here. First one is going to be Jonathan Greenard. He's a defensive end for the Houston Texans. He did have, it's really weird season for him because he's a young guy. He didn't play the first 2 weeks. He did have a dud game with no stats at all in week 4. But the other 3 weeks combined, he had 10 solos, 3 assists, 5 tackles for a loss, forced fumble, and 4 sacks. That's just a lot of stats even for 3 games, and he's vaulted himself up there as a boomer bust play, but a guy that's been getting increased playing time. He's getting over a 50% snap share, which is decent for a young player. Arizona is facing Houston in week 6. Arizona's top 10 in points allowed to opposing defensive ends. Again, this is one that could come back to bite you, but also a guy that you might want to look at just stashing if you can for those matchups because he has had some really good games here, and they don't have a bye week until week 10.
Yep. He's going to be on the field. Houston, some of these teams that we've been talking about today, these guys are on the field a lot, so that gives them ample opportunity for production. So it doesn't hurt to grab them up. As the season goes on, some of these guys might get a little more fatigued, so you may not see great production, but those boomer bust games later in the year as we hit these bye weeks, it doesn't hurt to have a guy like this that you can throw in. Who's next?
Sort of some of these we're looking at guys that are deeper down in these rankings or depth charts, or not the main guy like we had talked about Jackson, but he's outperforming Simmons. This one is the second sort of defensive end, if you will, in the New York Jets. It's Dexter Lawrence. Leonard Williams is the main guy there on the defensive line in general. But Dexter Lawrence has had, if nothing exciting, a nice even performance throughout the year here. He's got production each week, combined 10 solos, 10 assists, 2 tackles for a loss, pass deflection, and half a sack. The reason I'm looking at this as a play this week, though, the Panthers are playing the Giants, and the Panthers give up the most points to opposing defensive ends. It sounds like we're mentioning this every week. It's a trend, and you saw it in the game if you watched any of the Panthers game. They can't protect Darnold. And now they're talking about the head coach, Matt Rule, running the ball more. We'll see. Then they might very well have that opportunity here, given that the Giants are just a complete mess themselves and both teams trying to pound it out and not be throwing a ton. But at the same time, that's going to give you tackle upside. And this is more of a matchup-based performance. But as far as a spot starter, if you need someone because of buys, I like them.
And the great thing about this defensive line is you can't double team Leonard Williams because Dexter Lawrence can get after the passer. You can't double team Dexter Lawrence because Williams. So it really does give them the opportunity to try to have good fantasy production from both of them. Leonard Williams is a guy that I have in some leagues that I've been starting regularly and feel good about it. And Lawrence is a guy that I've stashed in a few leagues because there's potential and it looks like he's finally starting to live up to it. So definitely a good option. And rounding it out, what are we doing at D tackle?
Yeah, this is another guy coming off a bye. He's the less heralded of the defensive tackles between him and Kinlaw that are usually starting, but it's DJ Jones of the 49ers. Again, this is just a matchup-based play. 49ers use a big rotation on their defensive line. He's only got a 47% snap share on the season. But the Colts, we know they like to run. They give up the 10th most points to opposing defensive tackles. And he has a big play stat, like for defensive linemen, a sack or a tackle for a loss in 3 out of 5 games this year. And overall, he is getting a couple tackles a game for the most part, 11 solos and assists. It's more of a deep dive again, not someone you're going to keep on your roster the rest of the season. But if you need a defensive tackle for a matchup play, or if you just decide that you're going to, rotate him throughout the year because you don't have a defensive tackle like Aaron Donald that you can trust, I think he's a decent start. And Kinlaw just isn't getting stats right now. So DJ Jones is the preferred over those two.
Absolutely. And we make sure to include a corner and a D tackle each week because there are leagues where a corner and D tackle is required. So if they're not required, don't go out and chase them. These aren't really the sexiest plays to go get. Definitely look at some of these other positions, but we want to make sure to put that out there. So that's it, folks. Those are your groups: linebackers, secondary, defensive line. Always ask questions below if you got them, or jump in our Discord. Find us at rotoheat.com. Like, subscribe, do all those things. And we'll talk to you again next week.